Right now, as you watch this, something inside your body is switching off. Not because you're sick, not because something went wrong, because you're sitting. There is an enzyme in your muscle tissue called lipoprotein lipase. Its job is to process fat, to keep your metabolism running, your blood clean, your cardiovascular system functioning. And according to researcher Mark Hamilton at the University of Houston, within just a few hours of sitting, its activity drops by up to 90%. Not 90% if you never exercise, 90% regardless. And here is what makes this different from everything you have ever heard about health. No amount of exercise reverses it. We have built the most comfortable civilization in human history, and it may be quietly dismantling us. The average adult in the developed world now sits for between 9 and 12 hours a day. Work, commute, screen, couch, sleep. Then again, most of us feel this, even if we can't name it. The stiffness after a long meeting, the fog that settles in around 3 in the afternoon, the sense that your body is asking for something, and you cannot quite hear what. But here is the thing we keep getting wrong about that feeling. We assume it's about exercise, about not being fit enough, about needing to run more, or harder, or longer. The science says something much stranger. In 2015, a team led by researcher Avaroop Biswas at the Toronto Rehabilitation Institute published a meta-analysis in the Annals of Internal Medicine, a review of 47 studies, one of the most comprehensive ever conducted on sedentary behavior. What they found should have changed how we talk about health completely. People who sat for more than 8 hours a day, even people who exercised regularly, showed significantly elevated risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and early death. Sitting for most of the day and then going to the gym are two separate biological problems, not two sides of the same one. The modern compromise, desk all day, gym after work, appears to be insufficient, and almost nobody is saying this out loud. Let's go back 2,300 years. In Athens, around 335 BCE, a philosopher founded a school unlike any other. He didn't teach from a chair. He didn't stand at a lectern. He walked. Aristotle and his followers would pace the covered walkways of the Lyceum, thinking, debating, teaching, all while in motion. The ancient historian Diogenes Laertius documented this practice in his Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, and from it came the name that defines this entire school of thought, peripatetic, from the Greek peripatein, to walk about. This was not a personality quirk. In his work, De Anima, On the Soul, Aristotle argued that body and mind were not separate instruments. They were one continuous activity. The body in motion produced the mind in motion. Stillness for Aristotle was a state reserved for objects, not for beings capable of thought. Now, here is where it gets interesting. In 2014, researchers Marilia Pezzo and Daniel Schwartz at Stanford University ran a series of experiments measuring creative output in people who were walking versus people who were sitting. Walking boosted creative thinking by up to 81%. Aristotle built an entire institution around an insight that neuroscience would take 2,000 years to confirm. We now have the science, and we sit anyway. But I want to tell you something almost nobody in this space is talking about, because the story most people tell about sedentary life goes like this. We move less, we burn fewer calories, we get heavier, we get sick. That story is almost certainly wrong. In 2012, Herman Poncer and his team at Duke University published a study in PLOS I on the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer communities on Earth. The Hadza walk 10 to 15 kilometers a day. They hunt. They forage. They do not sit in chairs. The researchers expected to find that the Hadza burn dramatically more calories than sedentary Western adults. They did not. After controlling for body size, total daily energy expenditure between highly active hunter-gatherers and largely sedentary Westerners was statistically indistinguishable. The body compensates. When you move more, it quietly downregulates other energy-expensive biological processes, immune function, hormonal activity, inflammatory response, to keep the total roughly the same. Poncer called this the constrained energy model. The body is not a furnace, it is a negotiator. Which means the calorie argument, the idea that sitting makes you sick because it makes you burn less, misses the real danger almost entirely. The danger of sitting is not the calories, it's the chemistry. Back to Mark Hamilton and lipoprotein lipase, the enzyme we opened with. Hamilton, publishing in the journal Diabetes in 2004, showed that extended sitting essentially switches off the mechanism your muscle tissue uses to clear fat from the bloodstream. This is not about fitness levels. It is not corrected by your evening run. It is a direct cellular response to stillness, a metabolic state your body enters within hours of sitting, regardless of how fit you are. Hamilton coined a name for this field of study, inactivity physiology, not the opposite of exercise, a separate biological phenomenon entirely. So, here is where Code and Clay has to be honest with you. The temptation, especially for a channel like this one, is to look at all of this and say, go back, reject the desk, reject the city, reject the modern arrangement of life, and find your way to something older and truer. That would be the wrong conclusion. The Hadza do not live dramatically longer than we do. Hunter-gatherer life is not a template. It is a data point. And Aristotle paced the Lyceum partly because Athens had no traffic, no quarterly targets, no notification pulling him back to a screen every 11 minutes. The conditions that allowed that life no longer exist for most of us. Pretending otherwise is nostalgia, not wisdom. But here is what does exist. The threshold for meaningful benefit is far lower than we have been told. A 2011 study published in The Lancet, led by Qipeng Wen and a team at the National Health Research Institutes in Taiwan, followed over 400,000 people and found that just 15 minutes of moderate movement per day reduced all-cause mortality by 14% and extended life expectancy by approximately 3 years. 15 minutes, not an hour in a gym. Not a standing desk or a wellness program or a wearable that tracks your every step. 15 minutes. So the body is not asking for a revolution, it is asking to not be completely still. The Aristotelian insight that thinking and moving are not separate activities is not romantic philosophy. It is biological fact that we now have the neuroscience to confirm. The question is not whether to return to the Lyceum. The question is what it means to design a life, a workday, a commute, an afternoon, around a body that was never built to stop. That is not a question about fitness. It is a question about what kind of life we are actually building. In around 400 BCE, Hippocrates wrote systematically about the relationship between deliberate movement and health in a text called Regimen, addressing how the body responds to exercise, rest, and the rhythms of daily life. The idea that movement was medicine was not a modern discovery, it was ancient common sense. We built wearables to count our steps. We built standing desks to feel better about our chairs. We built gyms in the basements of the very office towers that keep us sedentary for 8 hours a day. We diagnosed the problem, and then we designed products around it. What we did not do was ask why. Why did we build a world that requires the human body to spend most of its waking hours completely still? Who decided that was the price of productivity? And what are we actually producing at the level of our own cells, our own cognition, our own felt experience of being alive by paying it? The biology is clear. The history is clear. The philosophy is clear. What is not clear is whether we care enough to ask the question seriously. Next time, we go further in, because it turns out the way you sit is not the only ancient behavior the modern world quietly dismantled. The way you sleep, when you sleep, in what pattern, in what light, tells a remarkably similar story, and the science there is even stranger. Next time, we go even further back to something even more fundamental than movement, something every human for all of history has done the same way, until about 200 years ago: sleep.